One research estimate is that by the year 2011, 80% of all regular internet users will have a virtual presence. And if that's the case, and that's 3 years from now, how are we preparing our students to interact in that environment? What role will that environment play? Will it be? It looks like it will be much more than entertainment. It probably will be for teaching and learning. People will be working in that space. People will be socializing in that space, being entertained. Many people think it is the ultimate evolution of the internet itself that will move from two-dimensional pages to three-dimensional spaces and learn to interact in that. So it has implications in the short run, perhaps, for teaching and learning. In the long run, we may all be spending part of our time in virtual space as well as our real lives. Although I had done a little experimentation with both simulations, games, and virtual worlds, I really wanted to go further with it and had the opportunity last semester with a sabbatical to really focus on these technologies, particularly virtual worlds. But at that point I was seeing them simply as tools that I could use to enhance my teaching, to engage students. Every teacher has almost, you might call it a toolbox, a selection of different tricks and tools that we pull out to try and engage students. And I thought, well, I'll add some tools to my toolbox. But in the process of really doing some research and some investigation and really going to a transformational conference called Games, Learning, and Society, held at the University of Wisconsin, where for the first time, I was not simply exploring this material alone or with a few people locally, but I was surrounded by 350 people who shared some of these same ideas. I started to see things in a different way, and what I saw, it wasn't just a matter of these being tools, but rather I was looking at very different cultures, that many of the tools that interested me were part and parcel of students' everyday culture and the way they interacted with each other online and the technologies they used, and that there was concern among many people studying this phenomenon that school is really in some ways stuck in the past, and that students are really challenged and excited by what's going on in their digital culture, and it's very difficult for the culture of school to really compete with that. And the concern seems to be primarily with middle school, where a lot of students tend to disengage intellectually and emotionally with their school experience, and yet they still stay fully involved with all the activities of their digital culture. And so many people are starting, in research, are starting to see if they can find ways to bridge those particular cultures. And I felt at that point we need to be doing more. We can't wait till all the middle schools in the world are transformed. We need to take some action now with the students we have before they go out into the world. And one is this notion of a decision in terms of which way we face as educators. Do we face toward the last century or toward the current century? And for most of us, most of our life has been spent in the 20th century. That's a century we're comfortable with. When we come to the end of our days, we'll have spent more years in that space, and yet our students really don't have that choice. Their lives will primarily lie in the 21st century. They'll need skills to cope with the challenges ahead. And since I think most educators agree that one of our responsibilities is to prepare students for the future, how can we do that if we're not aware of the future ourselves? And the difficulty is, I think the future, the range of years when we talk about the future has really changed dramatically. In my early years of teaching in the 70s and 80s, when we spoke of the future, it was 10, 20, 30 years from now. Now the future is 2 to 5 years. That changes. Beyond 5 years, it's hard to know what's going to happen, but we can anticipate change that can occur within the next several years, and it can sometimes be very dramatic. And so the challenge I see for us as educators is to be able to look ahead to those next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, anticipate change, prepare for it, help our students also be prepared for it. And what's interesting in Henry Jenkins' work, where he talks about the new media culture and the skills that we need in going forward in the culture, many of those skills he talks about can be found or can be developed in a virtual world. He talks about the importance of play. He talks about the importance of experimenting with multiple identities. He talks about collective problem solving, which often you have to do. One of the things that occurs in these virtual worlds is you're asked often to work in a group or a community with others to collectively take on a challenge or solve a problem. So many of the skill, he talks about multitasking, and I've become a much better multitasker as a result of time spent in a virtual world, because often there are many things going on that you have to attend to at the same time. So I saw this experience as powerful in many ways in terms of developing 21st century skills, in terms of being an experience, going back to the earlier reference to experiential learning, in terms of drawing the inner child out. Many components were possible in this space. And I think what was powerful about the Carnegie experience, and still is to this day, is that we created an environment where we could talk very openly and very deeply about teaching and learning. In that not only could I talk about things that concerned me and baffled me or ideas I had, but I was heard in a way that even when I had attempted to in other settings, I had not been. But there's an incredible openness in that community to entertaining possibilities. And so for me, Carnegie has really become a testing ground. When I have new ideas, I don't hesitate to share them in that community. They give me feedback, I learn from that experience, and then if I move beyond that community to some other presentation or discussion, in some ways I've been prepared by that initial experience. And for me that was very affirming, and I think, as I said, it gave me a professional voice. And that is very